Greetings, I'm Hurt Castro, coming to you from our state-of-the-art Suspension Development Center in Colorado Springs. Today we're going to show you how to service the Rockshox VIVID rear shock. This is the most complex of any SRAM family service. Here are the 7 steps. We'll cover steps 1 through 4 in this part 1 video and steps 5 through 7 in part 2.
First, remove the spring. Second, disassemble the shock body. Third, service the shock body shaft assembly. Fourth, service the IFP reservoir. Unless you've done this many times before, we sure do recommend that you check out these Rockshox product manuals, which are on the SRAM website as PDFs.
Please print these out and read through them before you put your bike in the stand. Okay, enough preliminaries, let's get down to business.
Clamp the shock by its body eyelet into vise. Use aluminum vise soft jaws to protect the shaft eyelet. Using a mounting hardware removal tool, remove the shock mounting hardware. Place an oil pan on the floor underneath the shock to catch all the oil that will spill from the shock during service. Place a large oil-absorbing rag underneath the vise where the shock will be clamped. Record the adjustment settings for post-service setup. Turn the beginning stroke rebound and ending stroke rebound adjustments to the full open position toward the rabbit. Turn the low speed compression adjustment to the full closed position toward the turtle. To remove the spring, turn the preload collar clockwise until it stops. Remove the spring retainer, spring, and drop stop. The drop stop houses a bumper which will not be removed from the shock. Set aside these parts until the bleed and reassembly section. Using a T10 Torx, remove the IFP cap from the IFP reservoir and discharge the air by depressing the valve. Using a Schrader valve tool, remove the Schrader valve core. Be sure to completely discharge the IFP reservoir to avoid injury during disassembly. Using the Rockshox 24mm pin spanner, unthread the seal head. Hold the pin spanner head in place with your other hand during use to avoid damaging the seal head pinholes. Pull up on the seal head and remove the entire shaft assembly. If the shock body inner tube becomes dislodged with the shaft assembly, simply separate the shaft assembly from the inner tube and remove the inner tube from the shock body. Using your fingers, remove the inner tube from the shock body. Remove the shock from the vise and pour all the oil from the shock into the oil pan. Confirm that the centering ring, located in the bottom of the shock body, is still in place. If the centering ring becomes dislodged when removing the inner tube, you'll need to separate the centering ring from the inner tube and remove it from the shock body. Using the pick as a hook, gently catch the bottom of the centering ring and pull back on the pick to dislodge the centering ring. You may have to hook a pick or two around the centering ring in several places in order to dislodge it. Be careful not to scratch the bottom of the shock body with the pick. Damage to this sealing surface will interfere with the performance of the shock. Remove the shock body and soft jaws from the vise. Spray the shaft assembly with isopropyl alcohol and wipe it with a clean, lint-free rag. Using the Rockshox shaft clamp tool, clamp the shaft assembly into the vise, piston side up. Using a pick, remove the glide ring on the main piston. Apply a small amount of grease to the new glide ring and reinstall it. Using a 13mm wrench, unthread the piston bolt. Carefully remove the main piston assembly, which includes the piston bolt, main piston, and shim stack washers. Keep all the parts together and set aside. Firmly pull up on the seal head and remove it. Using a pick, remove the shaft wiper seal and main shaft O-ring located in the interior of the seal head. Remove the quad ring top-out pad located on the back side of the seal head. Apply a small amount of grease to the new shaft wiper seal, main shaft O-ring, and quad ring top-out pad and reinstall them. Inspect the body seal O-ring located on the underside lip of the seal head for wear or damage. Replace it if necessary. Set aside the seal head and main piston assembly. Flip the shaft assembly in the shaft clamp so that the shaft eyelet is accessible. Using a 13 mm or crescent wrench, unthread the eyelet and remove it. Clean any Loctite from the threads of the shaft eyelet. Using a pick, carefully push the red beginning stroke rebound adjuster knob out of the shaft eyelet. This knob houses the detent ball and spring. Be careful not to lose these small parts. Again, using a pick, remove the beginning stroke rebound adjuster knob O-ring. Apply a small amount of grease to a new O-ring and reinstall. Using a crescent wrench, unthread the rebound needle and remove it. Be very careful not to damage the flats on the rebound needle with the crescent wrench. Using a pick, remove the rebound needle O-ring. Apply a small amount of grease to a new O-ring and reinstall it. Set aside the rebound needle. Carefully insert the detent spring followed by the detent ball into the offset hole in the shaft eyelet. Slide the rebound knob with detent features interfacing with the detent ball back into the shaft eyelet. Set aside the shaft eyelet. Flip the shaft assembly in the shaft clamp so the rebound bleed port is accessible. Grease the interior of the seal head and install it on the shaft assembly with the seal head threads oriented up toward you. And make sure the shaft wiper seal does not fold over when installing the seal head. Using a 14 mm wrench, thread the piston assembly back onto the shaft assembly and torque it to 70 inch-pounds. Flip the shaft assembly in the shaft clamp so the shaft eyelet threads are exposed. While pushing down on the rebound needle, thread it into the shaft by hand until it stops. Clean the shaft assembly threads with alcohol. Place a couple of drops of red Loctite on the threads. Be careful not to get Loctite between the rebound needle and the shaft. Loctite will prevent the needle from moving. Clean the shaft eyelet threads with alcohol. Holding the shaft eyelet assembly by the eyelet, thread the assembly onto the shaft. Do not hold the beginning stroke rebound knob while threading the shaft eyelet assembly. After approximately 4 full turns, you will hear an audible click, indicating that the rebound needle has engaged the adjuster knob. Continue to thread the shaft eyelet assembly by hand until it's tight. Using a 13 mm crow's foot wrench, torque to 130 inch-pounds. Remove the shaft assembly from the vise and set aside until the bleed and reassembly section. Clamp the shock body by the body eyelet into the vise. Using a 30 mm flat wrench at the base of the IFP reservoir to keep the reservoir from spinning, and a 24 mm pin spanner wrench on the top of the reservoir, unthread the IFP seal head and remove it. Hold the pin spanner flat during use to avoid damaging the pinholes. Inspect the IFP seal head O-ring for damage. Replace it if necessary. Using a 30 mm flat wrench at the base of the IFP reservoir, unthread and remove the reservoir. Using your finger, push the IFP out of the IFP reservoir from the back side. Using a pick, remove the blue glide ring and main seal O-ring from the IFP. Apply a small amount of grease to the new glide ring and O-ring and reinstall. Using a T10 Torx, remove the IFP bleed screw. Using a pick, remove the IFP bleed screw O-ring. Apply a small amount of grease to the new O-ring and reinstall it.
Set aside the IFP reservoir, IFP, and IFP bleed screw until the bleed and reassembly section. Okay, now watch the Vivid service video part 2 for steps 5 through 7.